There's
Today, I'll stand by as I go on live stream on Governor's Facebook page. Hafide and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's briefing with Governor Leon Guerrero on her recent trip to New York and to DC. At this time, I'd like to recognize, of course, the Honorable Magahaga Governor Leon Guerrero, as well as Department of Administration Director Edward Byrne, Bureau of Budget and Management Research Director Lester Carlson, as well as Guam Economic Development Authority Administrator Mel Mendiola. And at this time, I'd like to give the floor to Governor Leon Guerrero.
Thank you very much, Crystal. And before I begin, I just wanted to thank the people of Guam for the many prayers and kind words that I received as going over to New York to meet with our credit analysts. I just like to again thank and appreciate these kind words and prayers for us to be successful. Our presentation was excellent. I just got back last night, from a trip to New York and to DC. And the purpose of our trip to New York is to make a presentation to 2 credit ratings that have rated our credits here in Guam with the bonds and other debt issuance. The first one was Moody's, and the second presentation was over at S&P, Standard & Poor's. My fiscal team was with me during these presentations, and I'd like to thank them for an excellent job that they did in informing and in educating our credit analysts as to the current state of our house in terms of finances and the current state of our economy and what the future looks like. Along with me was Lester Carlson, who is the director of BBMR, Edward Burns, who's the director for Department of Administration, Mel Mendiola, who is from GITA, head of GITA, Daphne Shimizu, who is from DRT, and the chairman of GITA, David John. As a head of state, I understand, and I also have presented to these credit analysts. And the importance of that is that the credit analysts really want to hear from the head of state about what the environment is basically in relation to the finances, to credit, to debt, to the economy, to, again, like I said, future plans. I also wanted to say that this was a very opportunistic time to present to these credit analysts. And it is opportunistic and the perfect time because of the stability and because of our ability and our competency and our efforts to eliminate the deficit in even a time of crisis, and even in a time of an economic downturn, a time where we saw 0 tourists into our economy, a time where there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear in our people. We were able to eliminate our deficit and were able to strengthen and stabilize our house in terms of the finances. And I think this is very unique to Guam, and we had to and wanted to make that story to our credit analysts. Our goal was to have a improved grading. We're seeking for an investment grade from Moody's, and we're seeking for a higher level of grading from the S&P. What that means then and how that impacts our people and our island is that if we have a investment grade rating, we would be able to entice and attract more investors. Therefore, we are able to have more access to capital in the market. And as a result, we would decrease our interest rates and have millions of savings for our people and for our island so that we can use those savings to better improve our lives in all areas: public safety, education, health, utilities, infrastructure, all our daily needs to make sure we provide for our family and to improve our quality of life. So we wanted to show to the credit analysts what our story is. We nearly eliminated a decade-old debt. We processed and paid tax refunds 6 times faster than the court order requires, and without borrowing from our future or having to float a bond for operations. We reduced, eliminated overtime. We spent more federal dollars than previous administrations. We shifted a lot of our expenses to federal dollars. We collected taxes. We ended the year with more collections than anticipated despite a pandemic. We offered these points to our credit analysts, and we wanted to show them that our ability to manage our revenues is totally our ability. Yes, they are aware, and of course we presented that there were millions of dollars of federal stimulus, financial aid from the federal government, but that's just what it is, stimulus. It is not a permanent solution to our revenues. It's not a permanent solution to our economy. It's a stimulus. It's a bridge. It's an interim kind of situation that would help us in terms of, again, strengthening our financials. And we did that. We demonstrated economic stability with our own revenues and that our finances could stand up to any economic crisis. And we have shown that. And there is evidence and proof in the numbers that we are seeing. What's next after our presentation? We will have more meetings with these analysts. They will be asking us questions. They would be wanting more information as a result of our meeting. And we expect some decision and we expect some results within the next 6 to 8 weeks. That's our fiscal part of our trip. While I was there and preparing to come home on Monday, I got an invitation by President Biden to come and witness this very important piece of legislation, landmark piece of legislation, with the infrastructure bill signing by President Biden at the White House. I was among 10 governors in attendance. And I have to say that I was there when history was made. This is a big opportunity for not just the people in the United States, but us to be able to create more jobs, to be able to fix our roads, to be able to fix our ports, our airport, transportation. All these are very significant in terms of, again, improving our quality of life and in improving our infrastructure. Because if we improve our infrastructure, we will be able to, again, provide more investment opportunities coming from the outside and from within our island. Guam stands to receive $193.4 million over the next 5 years. And it is targeted to several years. And we have a breakdown and a calculation that we can share with you. And I can just share that, for example, um, in the Division A title, subtitle A, section 11126, which is page 196 of this infrastructure bill, we have a distribution formula which takes the amount that's given to the territories and calculated based on 40%. So within the next 5 years, for the first year in 2022, we stand to get $18,396,000. The next year, fiscal 23, we would get $18,816,000. And in fiscal year 24, we will get $19,152,000. And then in fiscal year 25, we'll get $19,530,000. And then in fiscal year 26, we'll get 19,908,000. This is our territorial highway program. This would repair and rebuild highways, our roads, and we have bridges here. Not as big as the one in New York, but we do have small bridges that goes underneath a lot of our main highway. Some of the money that we'll be getting, 25 million, will also be getting for broadband equity, access, and deployment program. And we are going to also work out a plan so that these can be distributed out to our people, so there's more access to broadband. And then 2.5 million will be given for state and local cybersecurity. This is very important because we need to make sure that our internet, our online are secured from hackers, are secured from people coming in to get information, and it protects private information and makes it very confident. Then we have public transportation, public transit, and the distribution formula gives us $11 million for public transit. And this is over 5 years, and this will improve the bus system. It would also help train our employees from the bus transit agency so that they are again equipped with the skills and the knowledge and the trade for them to provide reliable and available and accessible public transportation, which we want to, in our agenda administration, make it so people don't have to use their cars to get to work, and we'll be able to save money in terms of fuel and gas. We also have 30 million for airport infrastructure grants, and that would help with improving with capital improvement projects for the airport. It would improve the infrastructure of our airport and will make us more competitive in the aviation arena. And then, of course, water. Water is very important. We need to make sure that we provide clean water to our people. We need to make sure that our water system and our water infrastructure is such that we can deliver clean water to our people. And this is again funding for 5 years. And it would also improve the pipes that we have, and it would also be able to lay down a water infrastructure in places where development is going to occur. So as you can see, my trip to New York and to DC has been very, for me, productive. And again, we are there to tell the story of Guam, but not only that, we're there also to get results that would, again, improve not just our credit rating, but it would improve our ability to save in our bond market, and also help out with a lot of improvements in our infrastructure, from roads, highways, bridges, to internet, to water and utilities. So I just, again, in closing, just want to thank the people of Guam for their support, again, for their kind words, and most especially for their prayers for a successful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Leon Guerrero. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to questions from members of our media. Would like to introduce Jerry Partido. You may ask your questions.
Yes, good afternoon, Governor, and welcome back to Guam.
Thank you,
And,
Jerry.
Yes, ma'am. My question is, so do you have an inkling of the reaction so far of the representatives of the bond rating agencies? Were they impressed by, by our Guam story? Do you think we'll get that coveted investment grade rating?
Of course, being very optimistic, I will say yes. And I asked and requested for a favorable consideration. But one of the positive comments that was made from Moody's, this guy named Tim Blake. So there was a guy named Ken Curtis, I think is his last name. And he was the senior credit analyst overseeing most of the investments and most of Guam's economic situation, financial situation for many, many, many years. So he got to know Guam very well. And before he left, he mentioned to his senior analyst that for the first time in the history of Guam, that he felt that we had a strong financial health. He was very impressed and very amazed that we were able to eliminate our deficit in an environment and in an era where we had a pandemic, a crisis, our economy was slowed down. So that's a big testimony of our fiscal discipline and the competency of our administration and our ability to stabilize our finances. With the S&P, I did have good, you gauge it by how they react, how they ask their questions, and you kind of gauge it of, are they engaged when when you're talking? Are they look interested? Are they taking lots of notes? And all of that was happening. And S&P was also much more concerned about our tourist industry. And we presented that, with the pandemic and with our containment of COVID, it looked good that tourists will come back, because we would be considered as always a safe haven. And so we assured them that we are in a very positive situation and direction to bring back our tourists, especially in the light of Japan and South Korea increasing in their rate of vaccination. So those are all good points and good indications that we would, again, start bringing tourists, and maybe in the third and fourth quarter of next year, we'll start seeing a much more robust tourist industry. They had some questions that they wanted to ask on the sidelines when with the one-on-ones with Lester and our team and Mel. So once we get those questions and we answer them, they said we would probably hear from them in about 6 to 8 weeks, which is good. I'm looking forward to some good results, Jerry. I think it's about time, right, that we have some good news for our people of Guam, among others.
Okay, now turning to that new infrastructure law, right? There are a lot of areas covered by that new law. With regard to infrastructure, what will be your priorities for the incoming money?
Of course, my priorities would be laying out a good infrastructure foundation for clean water. That's very important. Jerry, our body is made out of 80% water, and we need to always replenish our waters in our bodies. And clean water is a must. Clean water is not negotiable. And so we will be able to continue providing clean water to our people. That's a big priority. And then, of course, our roads, right? Because safety is also very important for our people. And if we fix our roads, if we line our roads well with reflectors and lines that we can see even during heavy downpour, it just it just makes drivers a lot more confident to be traveling at night and to be traveling while it's really raining hard. So that's very important, very key to me also. Um, and of course, and you know, the good thing about this is we're able to repair and maintain these roads over a 5-year period because they're going to be giving us more. I mean, they're going to be giving us this. I think it's 95 million just for the territorial highway program. They're going to be giving that to us over a 5-year period. So it helps us rebuild our highways. And when we fix our bridges and make sure water flows underneath our bridges out into the water, we'll probably also fix and address flooding issues, especially out there in the Polaris Point area. Did you know that there's 5 bridges there, Jerry, just on Marine Drive going from Naval Station all the way to Hagatna? I didn't know that either, but it's underneath the road. Not
Okay,
like the
Governor.
it's not like the Brooklyn Bridge or the, you know, the Golden Gate Bridge, but it's a very important and necessary bridge to help with the flooding.
Okay, I'll wait for the second round. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Jerry.
Next, we have Leon Guerrero, Guam Daily Post.
Thank you, Crystal. Welcome back, Governor. On the infrastructure bill, with the 95 million over 5 years for highways, I think you broke it down around 18 or 19 million for those 5 years.
Right.
Would that free up local funding to focus repairs on non-routed village streets? I'm just trying to figure out if this is going to be just an addition to our federally funded highway projects, or if it would be able to free up some of the local funds that we utilize for our secondary and tertiary roads.
I think it'll do both. I think it'll free that up for more like the secondary roads, and also it's an an addition above the federal highway monies. Yeah.
So just to be clear, your intention is to utilize this additional funds to free up local dollars for village road projects.
We are still going to go on with our local road project because we have the funds for that. But this is in addition to that. So we will probably use it more in repairs and maintenance down the 5-year mark. Yeah.
And on the mass transit funding, $11 million over 5 years, do you think that's going to be able to meaningfully increase, for instance, the ridership, which I believe was around 12,000 riders annually before COVID? It would be hard to try to bring that number up with only 6 buses on your fixed routes. I think that's what GRTA put out in their CCR.
Right. We are also, yes. Here's my goal in the public transportation. I already told Sal that we should have a reliable bus transit system so people can be confident that they can get to work on time. So people can be confident that if they stand right at a bus stop, that bus is going to come every 15 minutes, or that bus is going to come every 10 minutes during peak hours. so that people then don't have to use their own private motor vehicles, and they will save on gas. So this money that we're pumping in, not just this money, but we're also trying to get another grant. We already have a $9 million grant to have a electrical bus ride and share program. And yes, this will buy more buses, and actually they are what do you call that, Phil, promoting electric buses and electric charging stations. And so we will use that. We will also use this money to train our workforce, and also to add more people, you know, for the vehicles. I know Sal has a plan. I'm not too sure what his bus numbers are, but I know he has a plan to get 20 more buses to Guam.
Thank you, Governor. I'll wait for the next round.
Okay.
Thank you, Phil. KUAM, Isaiah Uggan.
For the Governor, welcome back to the island. I was wondering, do you plan on using any of these infrastructure funds for the infrastructure needed for the new hospital? And is the plan still for Eagles Field in Manila?
So this infrastructure bill is not going to be used any towards the hospital. The monies that we will be using for the hospital will include infrastructure, of course, in the medical complex, and to help also improve the surrounding residents. What was your other one? What was your other question, Isaiah?
Oh, and is the plan still for Eagles Field in Manila?
Oh, yes. Yes, the plan is still for Eagles Field in Manila.
Okay. You know, if the president's Build Back Better agenda will be, I guess, signed into Congress, are you still going to be setting aside the $345 million in ARP funds for the new hospital?
In the Build Back Better Act, the 335 million that's set aside is specifically for the hospital. So yes, I will be using that.
Okay, but are you still setting aside the 345 in ARP funds?
I'm not setting aside 345 million in ARP funds. The 335 is coming from the Build Back Better bill. But I will continue to set aside monies for the hospital from the ARP, if that's your question. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah. Joe Titano, Pacific Daily News.
For the afternoon, Governor, everybody. Glad to see you back.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm wondering about, with the potential upgrade in our bond ratings to a credit grade. Do we have any projections? Like, have we crunched the numbers? Do we have an idea of how much money this could potentially save? And you know, of course, my mind goes to, again, the hospital and the prison as two big projects.
Yeah.
So do we have any idea about that? Are there any like specific
I know that,
projections?
you know, I don't have specific amounts, right, Joe, because you're going to have to know what the amount of the money that you are trying to issue in the bond market. But I do know that, you know, with the investment grade rating, it would provide ability to decrease our interest rates. And as a result of decreasing our interest rates, we'll be able to save. We project millions of dollars. Is it 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 million? I can't really say that right now because it depends again on how much we are going to be going out in the bond market. But I do know it does two things, and that is it attracts investors more, and it provides us with the ability to decrease our expenses in the interest rates, because the risk is mitigated if you have an investment grade. Yeah.
But
Governor, I'm sorry. Joe, I believe Mel Mendiola wanted to add to Governor's answer.
Yes, thank you. And to add to the governor's answer, she's absolutely right. When currently our government of Guam general obligation debt is considered speculative. In the event that Moody's provides an upgrade, then we would be venturing into the investment grade territory. What that does is that opens us up to a whole new pool of investors. That therefore increases the demand for our debt, and that then drives down the interest rate. So if you look specifically at our the DOC complex, for example, let's say that a particular debt offering is $80 million. And these are all just hypotheticals, okay? So let's say it's $80 million. $80 million at an interest rate of 4.5% over the course of 30 years would work out to about $4.7 million in annual debt service. If by becoming investment rating, by becoming investment grade, if that pushed down the interest rate up to 100 basis points, let's just say to 3.5, then that would be a difference of about $500,000 per year in annual debt service. That would free up $500,000 per year over the course of 30 years. And so then that would translate to about $12 million in net present value savings over the life of that bond. So we can definitely give specifics if we kind of know where we're starting, but interest rates are always a function of a variety of things, including the prevailing interest rate market. So we've crunched the numbers sort of generally based on past performance, how we fared in the market. We know, but the most significant action that'll happen as a result of any kind of upgrade is venturing from speculative territory into investment grade territory, thus opening us up to a larger pool of investors, retirement funds, insurance funds, et cetera, that may not otherwise take the risk to invest in government debt. And so that's kind of to answer your question on crunching the numbers.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Mel. I was just trying to kind of wrap my head around that.
Sure.
Governor, one other question. You spoke about public transit, I think 11 million over the next 5 years. Earlier this year, we were hearing we were hearing some real crazy numbers in terms of like the number of buses they might be able to purchase through the infrastructure package. It was something like 100 different. Is that money going to be for new electric vehicles? Is that for like training of drivers? I know you said. I'm just kind of wondering how exactly that's going to get put in there.
Okay, so Joe, I don't know what you're referencing about 100 buses that we are going to be buying. Was there was that coming from us? Was
No,
it a grant?
This was some of the talk that I believe Cell over there at Transit was having with the congressman as far as some of the money that might be opened up to the infrastructure package.
Yeah, I have not heard 100 buses, but I do know that Cell is applying for a federal grant, and I think that federal grant is 15 million is what I'm recalling. But that's not going to get us 100 buses. That's, going to get us some buses. I'm thinking he's looking at replacing the fleet that he has now, and he's looking at getting more. And so that's what we're going to use the monies for. And also we're going to use the monies to, provide the automated system to make sure that, there's efficiency in the scheduling, efficiency in the rides, efficiency in, making sure people get there on time. And also it's going to be used for, I know it's going to be used some for workforce training.
All right, thank you for that. I'll go ahead and hold off to the next round.
Thank you, Joe. Back to you, Jerry Partito, PNC.
Okay, thank you. Governor, did you also get a chance to meet with DOD, Department of Defense officials, generals, the top brass in the military, with regard to our relationship with them and their additional investments here? Because their exercises have been increasing on our island, and they're talking about, because of Guam as a safety haven for, for warships, not only U.S. warships, but allied warships like Great Britain and Singapore and others. So is there any new developments in that? And also, by the way, there's talk that if we can enhance our missile defense here because of the increasing threats from China? Were there discussions on that front, or
So I did not meet with the director, the Department of Defense, because we didn't really have time. This DC was not a scheduled DC meeting. It was an invitation for the purpose of just witnessing and being present in this landmark piece of legislation to be able to, experience the history of this. So I did not really meet with any officials from the federal government other than who were there that we could talk for a little bit, but there were no official businesses to be made in terms of meeting with secretaries and so forth of the Pentagon. But I do know that in talking with the Secretary of the Navy when he was here visiting Guam, that you're absolutely right, Jerry. We all know that there's increased threats around our region, and Guam is considered a very strategically located island that would help with the national security and the defense. And you're absolutely right that the allies are coming out here. A lot of that is to demonstrate to China the force that the US has in protecting the Indo-Pacific area. And you're absolutely right. We've had frequent visitors now from Germany, from England, from France, from Singapore, and even from Australia. And Guam is also a very opportunistic environment for exercises, not just on land, but in water and on air. So all of that is happening. As far as the defense, in terms of fortifying, right? Because we're the first line of defense. They are not just planning an offshore defense, but they also are planning on land defense. I don't have any of the details, but that's just the overall strategic plan that they have to fortify national security in this part of the region.
Okay, and one last question, Governor. There's this Afghan veteran who said he wanted to meet with you to discuss the possibility of using Guam as a transit point for Afghan commandos. Did that
Yes.
meeting push through, or
Yes.
what did
Yes.
you guys
Before
discuss?
I left, Glenn
Yes,
Pingalinan,
right,
and
exactly.
before I left, I met with him, and he presented his plan to me, and he wanted me to know his plan. But I also directed him, Jerry, to the Secretary of State, and of course, any kind of support and help for the Afghans have to come from the federal government. And I know that they have already, I think, shown that with the Afghans. And I know that Glenn is saying there's still some that are there, and that's the group and population he wants to work with. So his next step is to present it to the officials that can make that happen. I said to him, of course, the invitation still stands. And if the military wants to, we can work and help support that.
Okay, thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. Leon Guerrero, Guam Daily Post.
Governor, since Jerry brought up the military, I'm wondering if you've gotten any official confirmation from anyone at the DoD that Guam is hosting Marines from Taiwan, as Newsweek and Taipei Times has reported, and considering
No.
that since. And considering the
No,
sensitivity with China and Taiwan, would you be comfortable with our island hosting the Taiwan military?
first of all, when that article came out, Phil, Admiral Nicholson immediately called me and said that that was fake news. They were talking right about how they have partnered with the U.S. to do a Taiwan exercise here.
Yes.
Yes. So his sources and up through the chain of DOD, there was no exercise. And we know that because we didn't see any Taiwan exercise event happening here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then just my last question, Governor. I guess I wanted to ask about the rating agencies and should they come out with an upgrade to our investment rating, would your administration pursue the refinancing or refunding of any of our other outstanding bonds that are out there, considering savings are possible if we get an upgrade?
Absolutely. That's the most prudent financial action to do. We always want to refund and refinance to decrease cost and expense to our people.
Thank you. Just wanted to confirm. And maybe, Mel, do we have a list of what those potential issuances would be to just reference?
Sure, we have the, as usual, we have the debt abstract available on the GITA website, and then I can, I don't know if there's anything that's due for refi at the moment, but we can take a look and see if there might be any that are due for a refi. I don't think there are any at the moment, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, thanks.
I also wanted to Phil, to just also say that historically you see that we do this. We just, I think recently did it with the, I want to say JFK. And I think Lester probably knows the exact amount, but I thought we saved about 30 million, right, Lester? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, actually, just the BPT bonds alone, Governor, was over $60 million when we refinanced those. And to your point, Phil, there's usually a 10-year call from the date of initial issuance. So anything that was issued in like 2012 is potentially refundable, especially if the low interest rate continues and we receive, we're closer to the investment grade notch from Moody's than we are with Standard & Poor's, as the governor mentioned earlier. But we did refund for savings during the pandemic, the hotel occupancy tax bond. And there was enough confidence in Guam's ability to rebound from COVID that we actually sold those bonds and saved money. And we saved money last fiscal year, and we also reduced debt service in this fiscal year. So we're taking every opportunity, and the legislature has been very open to assisting with providing authorization for these refundings, and we look to continue that partnership.
Yeah, thank you, Lester. I was just trying to kind of account in my head because you're right. In the earlier in this calendar year, there were several bills that the legislature passed that allowed for the refinancing. I think there's a current one for GPA that hasn't been active upon yet. So I was just trying to see, minus the ones that we already took care of earlier this year, what would be eligible to refi in the next following the action from the credit rating agency. But I guess, Mel, it would just be that debt issuance report minus the ones that have already been acted on this year, right?
That's correct. The debt abstract, and Lester's right. The call date of 10 years, I think GPA probably the biggest candidate for a refi. Really where this is significant is for new, where this would be significant to us in the short term would be in any new issuances. So there was authorization under PL 3657 and 56 and 57 for the hospital and the Department of Corrections. And so any type of positive, you know, and I also want to note that maintenance of a bond rating is just as important as an upgrade. So during a time of COVID, during this pandemic experience that that our economy is, during this pandemic time that our economy is experiencing, it is incredibly important for ratings analysts to understand that our economy is resilient. And that was a lot of the story that we were sharing with the ratings agency. So as much as it's important to seek an upgrade, it is also equally important to maintain our current bond rating. And so our current bond, so with that, when we go out for any new issuances, including any type of medical campus debt or the Department of Corrections, being able to have a rating that is truly reflective of our financial health would translate into millions of dollars saved to the government of Guam over the lifetime of the debt.
Yeah, and Phil, you might recall in your days at the legislature that the construct of the budget is such that there's revenues that are adopted, and then the first thing that's taken off the top is debt service. Only after existing continuing appropriations are there then money set aside for the operation of the government of Guam. So debt service comes first, and that is something that everybody's very well aware of. And as Mel mentioned, debt service and the timely payment of debt is critical.
And we also know that if you decrease the debt service, there'll be more monies available then for our public services here, and making sure our operations are funded.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Phil. KUAM, Isaiah Uggan.
Governor, I was wondering, what is our current bond rating and what is the rating specifically we are trying to achieve?
Well, Lester, maybe you answer that because I want to make sure we get the bond rating correct. I think we just had an upgrade in one of the ratings. Yeah.
Yeah, in May of this year, Moody's took us off of negative watch and put us back on stable, which was a great indicator of our response to COVID. With the elimination of the deficit and the continued upward trend in business activity, taking care of, especially with Mr. Burns' efforts over at the Department of Administration, paying off long-standing and not very well known liabilities. We're still making payments through the Competitive Wage Act appeals. Every once in a while, somebody comes across a outstanding obligation that Mr. Burns is able to finally address. It's not because we didn't have the money. It wasn't presented to us, and those kind of things are not as common as they were for a little while. The rating that we have with Moody's is, and we're talking about a general obligation. It's like one notch below the first rung of investment grade. So we're really close with Moody's, and they rated the last 5 deals, and they gave us all the time and attention to be able to assist us in successfully refunding the bonds that we did over the past year and a half. And we feel that very confident, as the governor, I share her optimism that we should be able to return to the lower end of the investment grade rating. And as Mel mentioned, it just opens up a lot more opportunities for people who have a strict policy about what they do and don't invest in. A good example is the Government of Guam Retirement Fund. They don't invest in our bonds. They've got investment parameters that drive what they do and don't put their money in.
Governor, as you mentioned, we're expected to receive $190 million. So from the infrastructure bill, do you have a rough estimate on how much Guam is anticipated to receive from the Build Back Better Act? Build Back, yes.
From the Build Back Better Act? Well, for the hospital, we'll have like 347.5 million. In the Build Back Better Act, Isaiah, there's a lot of things in there. Childcare issues. I know that they're also looking at giving us the FMAP of 83, I think it's 83% for Medicaid, which, lowers our cost to Medicaid. I know also that we're looking at EITC, I think, well, no, EITC is already going. A lot of things in climate changes funding is also going to be coming to us. They're looking at affordable and accessible education. I know that they're looking at tuition free, I think for 3 years. It was, I think 10 years or 5 years, and then they brought it down. A lot of food options for children, reducing housing costs. And so, we have not yet to the details looked at it, but Medicaid, I think SSI might be in there also, so we might be able to get SSI there, and extending the child tax credit, increasing of $300 a month. So I will tell you that through our negotiations, through my work with the National Governors Association, and through my work of a meeting with the secretaries in all areas, HHS, in housing, in the military, and Homeland Security, in our intergovernmental agency directors, and people who are promoting the territories, especially with the National Governors Association. Guam is included under the territories, and we want to make sure that whenever there's any kind of benefits going out to all the states, that Guam is also a part of that benefit. And so far, that has proven to be successful. So they're hearing our story. We have visibility there. We have positioning there. We have notoriety there. And I'll tell you, a lot of that also was reinforced by military relationship and military support.
Thank you, Governor. Lester, you mentioned the rating that we are from Moody's, but do you have any from Standard and Poor's or Standard and Poor's? Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's there in the debt abstract. I don't have it off the top of my head because they have two different rating designations. Like Standard and Poor's has got the traditional AAA, triple B, and then anything in the double B is non-investment grade. Whereas Moody's has like Baa1, Baa2. I mean, it's a little. It's not as ingrained in my head as the traditional S&P and Fitch ratings are. But all that stuff was just updated in Gita's debt abstract. And so you'll see per each issuance, what rating agency rated the bonds and what the rating was for each issue. It's very comprehensive and it's very, very well maintained.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Isaiah. Joe Titano, Pacific Daily News.
Sure. A little off topic, but I know one thing that we're working on right now is the plan for the war claims distribution. And I know the Director Byrne, you had mentioned it back in September that the Guam War Claims Fund, which was set up a couple of years ago, wouldn't have enough money in it. I believe it was a $12 million reimbursement to pay back to pay out the projection for the war claims plan, the bill that was just recently passed. And there was some confusion in the legislature. And I was just wondering if you could kind of clarify the funding source and sort of what's going on with the war claims fund.
Yes, I would try and repeat what I said in the legislature and hopefully unconfuse you if I fail to unconfuse them. We spent on the previous war claims payout about $12.8 million, which was reimbursed by the federal government. The money was paid out from the general fund in the first place. So when we got the money back from the federal government, we put it back in the general fund. That only seems fair. And the general fund shouldn't suffer because of the fact that we paid it out and got repaid. So that's what we did. So the net result is the new payout that we're going to make for war claims will also come from the general fund. This time we're not going to get repaid, but in the end, however you look at it, the general fund is always going to pay out these war claims.
Right, understood. But I think kind of I guess the point of the contention was sort of over the fact that the war claims fund, the reimbursements were supposed to stay in the fund. Could I just get some clarification on that?
Well, I think the legislature kind of thought they dreamed up a fund that really didn't exist. Right? You know, it's like taking money from one pocket to the other, right? If you take it out of your left hand pocket and put it back in your right hand pocket, you've still got the same amount of money. I think the legislature thought that somehow the repayment of the federal funds would create an additional fund that wasn't there before. But what they omitted to recognize, and we tried to tell them this several times, is, you know, the general fund is the fund that has to bear every expense in the last resort. So when we paid it out from the general fund in the first place, and you know, the governor took that decision to pay it out to the war claimants in advance because they weren't getting these payments under the federal plan quickly enough. We paid it out from the general fund and we were able to reclaim it from the federal government. There wasn't any new money created. It was just putting back in your pocket what you'd lost.
All right, I appreciate the answer. What, Governor, you know, maybe the next question, Governor, I'm wondering, we heard that in the next couple of days, the COVID-19 restrictions might be lifted. I'm just wondering, do we have an idea, you know, for the holidays when that might be and what specific restrictions we're looking at lifting?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. We are going to be discussing that tomorrow and we'll be issuing a press conference. So tune in and you're invited.
All right, I look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Joe. Going back one more time for any last minute questions. Jerry, do you have any remaining questions?
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Phil, do you have any outstanding questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Isaiah, do you have any outstanding questions?
Yes, one more question. When should we expect to start seeing money from the infrastructure law?
You know, one of the things that I'm going to be going to in November 30th, 2 weeks from now, Isaiah, is a summit that the National Governors Association is hosting. And in that summit, the secretaries of these various agencies like Transportation, the Department of Interior, the Department of Commerce, and so forth, are going to be there presenting a detailed explanation of the infrastructure bill. And I expect during that period of time that we will be informed of what exactly the process would be and when we expect it. But I do know that when I was at the signing of the bill, that President Biden was very urgent about pushing these monies out. In fact, the next day he was going to go, I think, to New Jersey to make sure that this plan is effectuated. So I will be, once I know the information, of course, communicating it back to our people. So on November 30th, I will be going back to not DC, but Maryland, and we'll be spending 3 or 4 days there with these secretaries to, again, explain in much more details how we roll out this plan and exactly what this plan gives to the people.
Okay, Governor, I'm so sorry. I have one more question. You mentioned, can you actually talk a little bit about how the infrastructure funds will also translate into jobs for our people?
Of course, you know, when you build your roads and you build your highways and you maintain and repair your bridges, you're going to need people to do that. So I'm expecting construction workers. I'm expecting more bus drivers. I'm expecting more administrative clerks to help out with all of that. So this is a job creation. In fact, during the signing, the president had 2 big unions there, and they're like the electrical unions, the SEIU unions, because these are the people with the jobs that would be created. Additionally, I think there's going to be also a lot of apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship build up with Guam Community College. So it would establish then the resources to train and to upscale the skills of our people. So yes, there will be job creation. Once you have increased construction activity, jobs will be created.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you,
Okay.
Isaiah. Last but not least, Joe Taitino, any outstanding questions?
All good on my end. Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Just to preview you for tomorrow, we will have a press conference to announce an easing of restrictions. We have that tentatively planned for 11:30 a.m. So we look forward to you joining us again virtually to talk more about COVID-19. Please be safe.
Thank you, everybody.